Hey folks, Ronnie Newhouser here. I am responding to Modern Renaissance Man's video, his response to me. First off, I want to say I apologize for being very visceral, and that was disrespectful, and that is not how I usually operate. That's not what I want to be, but I was really angry that night, and there's no excuse for that. But what I want to do is hone in on points. And each of these points that I'm going to make, we could literally talk for hours on each one, but I just want to hone in, because I really think you're missing a lot here on this particular subject. So if I could just I made some notes here just to, again, focus in on some points and try to be succinct. And I'm going to offer a boatload of links underneath the video. Stuff that I've been researching this for a number of years. I've already known about this stuff. I could have put more. I could put tons and tons of links. So I think what I'm going to offer should be plenty to make a powerful point. All right, so the first thing, I just want to make sure that you don't think I'm not saying I have any experience of being a black man at all. That is not why I made the statement. But the statement was pertaining to, you had given me the impression that you didn't really care about the history, and you seemed to think that the oppression and stuff kind of ended after slavery. Now, I can only go by the video and what you said at that moment. That's the impression I got. Now, I do think I could tell when you did respond to my videos, there are a lot of things you didn't hear about, and you even said it. I didn't appreciate that you said something because I didn't put links. I wasn't even thinking about putting links at that point. That it's all bullshit, you know. Well, it's not. It's there's some truth, and I'm going to prove that. Okay, so, and yeah, I'm not saying I'm a black man. I do happen to be married to a black woman. That doesn't change my experience that way. But I do have empathy for the black experience, okay? And I think that's important. So anyway, another thing, just to tell you a little bit about, what do I do? And some of this pertains to this. First off, I'm a musician, a musical artist. I have about 25 CD and DVD releases. And a lot of the music that I do has social content in it. The stuff that's not instrumental. I have been involved in movements, and I think this is huge pertaining to what we're talking about. I've been involved in anti-war protests, anti-police violence, a number of other things. I was part of the Occupy movement. I created a work group called Issues and Proposals that dealt in that passed unanimously a proposal in the New Haven Board of Alders in conjunction with the Green Party. And believe me, I learned a lot during this. I'm not saying that I did all this, but it was part of the group that I was part of. And we passed a proposal to end corporate personhood, which is still a fight that's going on across the United States, and I think it's a really important one because I don't think corporations should have human rights. In fact, more rights, because you can't penalize them with jail time, but you can fine them, and that's usually not good enough. So it's become a big ecological and economic problem. I also want to clarify that I spoke about the lineage of the history because of that original comment you made, like saying that it just ended it just seemed to insinuate that it ended at the end of slavery. So I was giving a history that's coming up to now. And even after Jim Crow, the laws were passed to stop those laws, there's a new Jim Crow, and there's information on that I'm going to link to also. So I think it's really it's important to understand the lineage. Now this is the crux right here, and this is from your statement. Again, I can only go by your statements. That I don't think you really understand institutional racism and the claims of it, because you seem to think it just has to do, institution means law. It's not just that. In fact, it's how institutions are derived and how they function. So if you have issues, if it's still functioning in sort of the same way, and people still break laws too, that's another thing. You can have a law and people don't abide by it. And that's a lot of what the new Jim Crow and redlining that's still going on. Again, I have links. It's showing that it's still happening. There still is a disadvantage. It's not true that it's equal. It just isn't. And this has nothing to do with welfare. This issue has nothing to do with it. It has to do with, actually, it does in the sense that what it's trying to do is stop the need for welfare by empowering these communities. If you empower the community and create real opportunity, they will respond. It's obvious, I think. I think it's obvious they will respond. I think you're putting the cart before the horse. You're not considering the factors that lead to the need of welfare. And that is a gigantic discussion, not only in just institutional racism, but with classism and everything, economics, and the kind of system that we have that creates disparity. I don't think we should abide by that. I think we should fight against that. So I'm also going to put, again, a bunch of links about institutional racism, tons of it, and the peer-reviewed papers I was talking about. Again, and you could just go look these up yourself. You'll find a lot more. There's just so much of it. I could never fit it. One guy you can check out is Michael A. Wood. He was a Marine and an ex-Baltimore police officer. And I'm putting a link up to that also. And he stated clearly that they took part, and the policing institution, the way it's organized, not that everyone's racist, the way it's organized, the way it's targeting, the way the laws are designed is affecting the black community more. And you kind of messed up when you talked about the ratio. Well, you didn't consider the ratio. Black people are 2.5 times more likely to be killed by police. You can't go by the overall number. You have to go by percentages. And that's just one tiny part of it. There's all the harassment. The stories are amazing of how many people are harassed. I mean, I know people myself that have told me like how often they've been harassed and pulled over for nothing. I don't face that, and it happens. So these are just one or a few of the zillions of instances of institutional racism. Also, you spoke about people in black people having jobs in high positions. Listen, you can always come up with anecdotal evidence of some person got in here, got in there. Yes, we are striving for things to be better, and they are better in certain ways. There's no doubt about it. We're not saying it's not better. We're saying there's still a massive inequity. And if you look at all the powerful institutions, go to some of the really powerful institutions in the world, and you're going to notice almost all white, okay? Very close. So the ratio is way off. It's not even close. It's ridiculous. And again, we're all people, so you can't just say that it's them, it's their problem. It's the conditions they're under that are causing it. This is sort of an irrelevant point, I think. You spoke about the KKK being in the Democratic Party. Okay, well, that's a little complicated. I mean, I'm not a Democrat, so it's kind of irrelevant to me. I'm not a Republican either. I'm independent, and actually probably follow more the Green Party. But at the time, the South was just heavily controlled by Democrats. And KKK members were in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. It's just down south where most of the racism, I think it's a little deeper down there at the time. It was just that the Democratic parties were in control, and a lot of KKK members were infiltrating into government because it was, there was a lot of people with those kind of feelings back then. But there was a switch in the 60s where the Republicans kind of took on the ideology of racism, and the Democrats took an ideology of more helping people, with human rights movements. Now, they didn't do a good, neither of them, well, the Republicans didn't seem to be wanting to do a good job, and the Democrats claimed to do a good job, and neither of them were being an aid. Okay, now on the Black Lives Matter movement. I did look at some of your links. In fact, I've seen some of them already. Some of them, the whole Marxist thing is ridiculous. First of all, Marx was just a critique of capitalism. And if you look what he said, the issues that we're facing right now are what he said would happen. So Marx is, when you throw the word Marx and try to use it as this demonic thing, that's really misleading. That's kind of red baiting. That's McCarthyism. We kind of gone beyond that. McCarthyism is absurd, okay? Now, people have tried to make systems to create more equality and called themselves Marxists, okay? Now, and that ranges from people who came up with good ideas for systems, and then people who, well, I wouldn't even really call the USSR and China Marxist, because they didn't follow his ideology. In fact, I think if Marx was alive at the time, he would have been, oh my God, what are you doing? You're doing it all wrong. This is horrific, okay? But the point was, his critique was correct on capitalism. He was on the money. So, let's get beyond that. I think that was absurd to use that. It's fine with me that they're Marxists. They want equality for labor. That's great. Who doesn't want that, Well, rich people, okay? BLM as an organization. Here's where an involvement in movements, where I can offer a little of insight, okay? As an organization, if you look on their website, they don't promote violence. They do try to have peaceful protest. And if you look at all the protests that happen, I put a map up, global map. It's astonishing how many protests there were and are, and they're still going on. And really, in comparison, the small amount of violence that you're being pushed over and over. And some of the violence, and you like to offer videos, well, you can look up videos of the police starting the violence a lot. This happened in Occupy. They were constantly starting trouble. And there were plainclothes police officers that were found during Occupy that were macing people, and then you see them get into a police van and get away. So it's very interesting, okay? That was one of the things you said you didn't think existed or you didn't know, and there's links to that also. So everything I'm going to say here, pretty much, if I miss something, you can ask me for the link. I'll look it up if you want to, or you can look it up yourself. But I'm going to offer extensive links. So one of the videos you offered, again, I think you have to see the difference between an overall data compared to anecdotal evidence, which, like the woman, the BLM person talking about, she didn't care about Target. Well, I understand. If you listen to the whole speech, what she said, everything she said was correct. It was right. What's really going on is what she said. And she's upset that the news focuses on looting. So property is more important than human life and oppression of people. Well, it's not. And we shouldn't accept that. That was definitely made out of frustration. I don't care about the Target, because Target, if you want to go into economics and start talking about capitalism and the way Target and those kind of corporations operate, they're quite corrupt and they're very abusive. And the reason those jobs are offered are only to make a tiny minority incredibly wealthy. The disparity in pay between the CEO. I've even done, Disney. I think I looked up what one of the Disney guys made. Just the CEO. He didn't create Disney. He's a CEO. You make 30,000 times the person who makes the lowest wage in your company? Really? How many hours do you work? There's a lot of inequity going on here. There's a lot of problems. The other thing on movements, you got to understand, when I was in movements, you just can't control everybody. It's a public forum. You could do your best. And again, the Black Lives Matter movement as a whole, the movement, the organizers as a whole are pushing peace. But they're pushing for equality. And I'm not sure I don't get the part, I didn't see what you said about the trying to break down the family unit. I'm not sure what you mean by that. I don't know if you think that because they're backing LGBT rights, that to you is breaking down the family unit. And if that's true, I would say that they have the right to decide what their family unit is. I don't think you do. And you don't have a right to interject your religion into politics in that sense, into law. Okay? Because then we'd have to let all people, all religions do that. This country is actually based on freedom of religion, supposedly, okay? So no, I don't think that would be a way to do it. I think we have to do it on terms of behavior. On job closings, you kind of seem to allude to the fact that you think that because it's not a large number of people not going back to work is what shut down the business. False. The pandemic shut down the businesses. That's why they're behind. They're not getting the business they used to get, and they were shut down for a while, and they're getting back on their payments and all sorts of things that they cannot make up, so they're going under left and right. And they're expecting hundreds of thousands of businesses to go away. And jobs, a lot of the jobs did not come back. That's the whole point. So if you start lumping everybody into some guy who stayed home, well, a lot of people, there's nowhere to go. You know, the jobs are not available. Listen, good paying jobs in general are not available to everybody. It's impossible in this system. It doesn't have to be that way, but it's possible in this system for everybody to make lots of money, which I think is sad, because I think we saw who the important workers were during the pandemic, and they were workers making, minimum wage. Pretty sad. Not much respect, because sometimes those things are more important. All the time, actually, right? The other thing, any country worth its salt would have taken that money that they gave to Wall Street for stock buybacks, put a halt on rents and mortgages until the end of the pandemic, and then continue on, and just pay labor and keep the business owners above water during that time, so we could quickly remove the pandemic to get it out of here. Okay? If we moved in that direction quickly, we'd probably be over it much faster. And then you just have this people step right back in their jobs. Remember, a lot of people did step back in their jobs because the unemployment rate when we were on total lockdown was much higher. It's still really high. It's like, I think it's 11%. It could be changing. It's around there, which is really high. It's ridiculous, okay? But it was much higher during the lockdown. The problem is a lot of people went back, and then a lot of businesses were gone, so a lot of people could not go back. And by the way, my mother-in-law, I don't think, it seems like you think, maybe you think people are losers if they don't risk their lives. She's 70 years old. She's not going to go back and to her job right now. She's not going to, and I wouldn't want her to. I wouldn't risk people's life for an economy. You seem to want to just, you can't take precautions that easily. The best way to take precautions is not have people bringing the disease into the house. You don't put plastic up and expect it to just work and just stay away from everybody, which causes mental health issues, by the way. So you have to consider that. If you just lock people into like cubicles and put up plastic and keep, someone who's leaving the house away from grandpa, that's causing serious mental issues. You have to consider all these things. So that puts weight, that also costs a lot of money. It eventually leads to other kinds of issues that cost money. So you have to consider all the factors. Okay, on college. Are there scholarships? Yeah, never said there weren't. But right now, it's a fact, colleges are way more expensive than they used to be. The debt on people, and you need a college degree much more than you used to, like when I grew up. It's much more needed now. And here's the funny thing, some of these jobs that are really don't need someone with a college degree are asking for it. It's really a market for owners right now. They have control of people in a lot of ways. Well, until maybe until this happened. So maybe there's a little backlash, and I'm not really upset about that. I think they've been very abusive to labor, and we know this. Again, there's documentation on that. Maybe I'll offer something on that. I don't know, but you can. Again, I'm going to offer as much as I can here. All right, another thing you talked about, problems in the inner city. Well, I've met groups in the inner city that are working on inner city issues. And it's very hard for them because we're not getting to the crux. And the crux are the institutional issues, the way they operate and the corruption within inside them that is leaving these people behind. They're, just because you or me or someone did fine, it doesn't mean everyone else did. I would suggest you look into the millions of people who are having an incredibly tough time. And it's not just because they're doing all the wrong things. Sometimes the structure buries people. It happens all the time. Let's look at 2008. People who worked all their life. This is a good example. And this is not pertaining just to black people. It's just pertaining to hordes of people. And 2008, that crash, and a lot of these crashes continually happen. a whole slew of people could not retire because they lost their livelihoods. So a lot of them sold their homes that they worked for all their life, and they moved into mobile homes and are actually transient workers for places like Amazon. They're driving around in mobile homes. They're getting sick and dying. They're being treated horribly at Amazon. A woman did a book on this. She actually went in Amazon and worked into these places and followed these people around. It's astonishing how disgusting it is. We would never treat anybody like this. But they're using the fact that, you know, they pump in this idea that they're old school and they're hard workers, and, you know, just to get them to do things. And you know, there was instances of like in the Amazon warehouse, they wouldn't turn the air conditioning on, and they didn't want to open the doors, so because they were afraid people were going to steal. So they just hired ambulances to stay outside until people passed out. Now I want you to think about that. That sounds like we're returning to the Gilded Age. It sounds like all the deregulation of the New Deal that saved this country, that created a middle class, and the last 50 years of deregulation is really affecting people, and it's bringing us back. That's why the disparity of wealth is so much larger than it used to be. It's because of this deregulation and the corporations using their money to actually fight labor. Of course, this is a class issue, but we all face that together. So I think I'm hoping we can agree on that. So anyways, I think I hit enough points. Let me add one more thing about when wealth moves into neighborhoods. We saw this in Manhattan. Had an incredibly thriving artistic music scene. A lot of poor people or small music businesses that could survive at the time. So wealthy people moved in, made it, corporatized it, gentrified it, and forced these people out. I don't agree with that. I'm sorry. I don't think you should be able, because of your wealth, to do things like that. And people just couldn't afford the rents. So you got to understand, in cities like that, you don't own the buildings. Rich people own the buildings. You just rent, and when the rents go up because of that, you're gone. And I just don't think that's one of the ugly parts of capitalism, you know. And it needs to be. It's another of the many things that need to be addressed. So anyway, but I think I've said enough about this. I want to kind of put it to bed because, again, I'm going to have links below, and what I'm going to tell you is what some of the links are. Okay, so how structural racism works. Slavery and the prison industrial complex. The prison industrial complex, institutional racism, and trauma in black communities. Michael A. Wood, who I mentioned, Marine and ex-Baltimore Police Sergeant, on institutional racism. Institutional racism explained. And then I have a list of 5 scholarly papers on aspects of institutional racism. Agent Provocateurs. I have 4 links to that. The New Jim Crow. 2 links to that. Angela Davis is one of the speakers. I think you should look up who Angela Davis is. She knows a lot. She's got quite the experience. College costs. I have one on that. Current segregation. 3 links on that. Black people 2.5 times more likely to be killed by police. I have a number of links on that. Peaceful protests. I have a number of links on that. And also, I offer this Confessions of an Economic Hitman if you want to see how the capitalist system works globally. I think you'll find that quite fascinating. All Power to the People, Black Panther and Native Movement documentary. Great documentary. Current redlining. And I have a number of links on that. And then I have another one, I don't remember exactly what it was. It's of just economic interest, which affects us all. So, if you want another link, let me know. Again, I apologize for the way I behaved before. I don't think that's right, and I don't like to do that. But I do want to point out, I really think on this subject, you're not informed. And I have looked into this for years, and, you know, my wife is, again, she's doing her dissertation, you know, her doctorate. Her doctorate dissertation is on aspects of institutional racism. And where do you think the data came from? When you do a doctoral dissertation, you need mounds of data to prove your point. So I think she might know something. And again, I hope you listen, and yeah, take care.